But my idea with the grumpy uncle talks is that like sometimes I feel like a grumpy uncle when I look at pitches or when I talk to entrepreneurs that come to me and we talk about potential investments, and I feel like a grumpy uncle. I always have things I think are issues. I feel like I'm complaining a lot, and it's not that fun to hear. But maybe it's good also to get the feedback.
Do you consider yourself to be a grumpy uncle, or have people told you that you are a grumpy
No,
uncle?
I consider myself a grumpy uncle. I haven't gotten that feedback yet. I do get the
If you keep on sending that energy out, it's gonna come.
feedback. I actually don't like it, but I do get the feedback sometimes. I give sincere feedback that is useful and helpful. Mm.
As long as you're not creepy, I think that's good.
Creepy uncle talks.
Cool. So what has been going on? Last time we recorded was I think in
Hmm.
May, and now we are in September
Mm.
2023. 4 months. What has happened on your end?
That's an ocean of time. A lot of things on the private side,
Yeah.
but maybe more interesting on the professional side. I had this idea to raise a fund, a proper fund, a VC fund.
Why you say had?
Had because it's news to you, but I think it's
Yeah.
on hold right now, actually.
What? Okay, let's deep dive.
Okay.
Help us understand what's going on.
So at first we had this idea to me and a partner, we were going to raise an AI fund. He contacted me during spring and thought that there is a lot of things going on with generative AI, and he has a really good background in
Yeah.
that, and I also have pretty good background in that also. So he thought we should raise a fund, and I was like, no, I think I need a little bit more track record before that. I only worked with investments for like 3 years as an angel. I don't have that big acumen to show for making good investments yet. But he convinced me, and he said he had good.
Did someone tell you that you are not a good founder for a fund, or was it you yourself that just keep on like telling yourself I need to be better?
Okay, like this. That feedback didn't come directly like that, but me and this
Uh-huh.
person, we attended one of these fundraising incubators almost. It's called VC Lab.
I heard of
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
and a lot of people, know about the incubators for startups where you can go in
Yep.
and get support to build your startup. But apparently you can do the same for VC, for a VC firm.
Hmm. It's a 10th, 11th, or 12th cohort. Which one were
11,
you
I
in?
think it was. Yeah. So
11.
it
Yeah.
started in June. It was a program that's going to end in October, but we dropped out during July. And
This is gonna be fun.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. It was fun. It was a crash course, and from the start, they told us that you have to be aware of that this is a closing program. You're going to close your fund. If you complete the program, you're going to close your first fund. So that sounds good, right? But with that, it comes also a lot of sales, basically telling
Yep.
LPs that they should trust you and put money in. And I'm okay with that. But the thing is that the program runs over high summer in Sweden, and the program is
Yep.
American led. So, and they don't really know the,
They don't have
yeah, they don't
summer.
have summer. They don't know the concept of vacation. So, here everybody checks out here in Sweden and leaves the office in July after midsummer, and then you can't really reach people.
Yeah, I mean, Europe just came back. Europe are gone in August,
Yeah,
so
and it was this constant chase. At first, you need to find your investment thesis. You should make that crisp and clear, and then go out and check and test it out with potential LPs. Um,
hmm.
we did that.
How many talk to?
Um, maybe 10 or
Oh,
something
that's
like
good.
that in total. Yeah. So you start out with your friends or your investor friends, basically. So and listen in on what they think about the thesis and so. But it's not really enough with 10, obviously, and I do know some more people, obviously, but still chasing these people during July, it felt like I'm not sure. I'd rather do this in September or later. And while the program was pushing us to do pacts or something called pact, which is basically an LOI. I want to invest in your fund.
Ah, like soft
Yeah, soft
commitment.
commitment. You sign a paper, but it's
Okay.
not legally binding. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had one guy who verbal.
Do you want to disclose how much you wanted to raise?
Yeah, this is interesting too. Very good question, Thibaud. So at first we thought that, well, we need to close a 200 million SEK fund, which is 20 million euro fund, and maybe
Yep.
in a phased closing with like half of it at first. So how do you do that? Then you need to know either really wealthy people or institutional investors. So we talked to some of the institutional investors here in Sweden, and apparently a 200 million SEK fund, 20 million euro fund is not that big in fund measures, and we knew that, so we thought like 200, sure. But this institutional investor, they don't go into funds that's smaller than 400 million SEK, 40 million euro, and then they could stand by half of that and put in half of that. So then basically we needed to raise 200 million SEK by our
More.
by ourselves, and then they could pair it out.
Oh, wanted to sign a pact?
No, it was an initial meeting with them and understanding their process. So kind
Hmm.
of understanding that if we can find 200, then we can talk to them. But they were open to it, and they have made investments like this before.
I mean, we're gonna come back to many of these open loops because I am myself figuring out with a few friends very different competences and all that stuff about what we could do to raise a VC fund as
Hmm.
well. And it's just the amount, let's say, preconceived ideas of how it is to do it. Because I think we have watched or researched three different VC funds that are currently raising
Mm.
money and watched what they are doing and what they are selling. And we are absolutely amazed with how little content there is.
Mm.
So when usually when I ask, okay, so how many investments have you done in your field that you're gonna be a VC fund for?
Mm.
And when I watch these that I've seen, they're pretty much none. And they are raising 1 billion kronor, 100 million euros. And some of them have really weird setups that I would, as if I was an LP, if I had that money, would just no. In that asset class or venture, I can go to someone who has lower fees, doesn't charge everything all over the place, and still will have the same return. So my question is, what was it that you were trying to get funding for?
You mean the investment thesis?
Like like the track record you
Yeah.
guys had? Exactly, in your thesis. How tight was it? Or was it extremely general?
It wasn't extremely general. We were really pushed to try to crisp it. So what you try to do is you try to find metrics that is interesting to LPs. And basically the most interesting metric is something you mentioned there, which is return on capital invested. If you can't really, and money is not secured until you actually make an exit and pull them out of there. So that's really return.
Exactly.
But then you can calculate something called total value to put in, a TVPI, and that is measurement of like, okay, I made these investments, they have had up rounds, so the balance sheet should be worth a little bit more than what we put in. And that could also be a metric. It's better than nothing. But if you don't have these, then you have to go even further down and talk about that you have built successful startups, or that you have some kind of network with a deal flow that is unique. In this case, I yeah.
But let's talk about that because that's what I think is everyone says it, but then when you look at the actual sheets or the pitch deck or
Mm.
whatever, they start with, oh, we're gonna look at in our ecosystem we have 6,000 companies, and out of those 6,000 there are 600 we're gonna look at in the first
Mm.
screening, and then we have 100 of those that we're actually gonna look into in depth.
Mhm.
If it's 6,000 companies, it's pretty much gonna be the same 6,000 companies as every VC fund in Stockholm we're gonna look at. So it's not that
Yeah.
specific. Or am I just being too
No,
naive?
I don't think you're being too naive. The general rule of thought that I hear out there from other people's running VCs, because apparently VC is a very inclusive community. I didn't expect that. I got
Yeah.
pretty good support from some of the established VCs on like, talk to these people. This is potential limited partner, and I'll help you out in this and that way. So big kudos to that, to those people. And I lost my train of thought there.
I was asking how Since if it's 6,000
Right. So
companies, are we
unique deal flow.
watching all the same
Unique
things?
deal flow. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So it's
exactly.
not enough to go to events, to Techstars and Sting and so on, because everyone else will be there.
Yeah,
What do you do then? Well, VC is VC money is basically a commodity right now. So it's kind of a paradox that you will say no to 99% of the companies pitching you, but the 1% that you do want to invest with, you have to beg to take your investment because they have so many takers, and these are the investments you want to make. So how do you put yourself in that position? And I'm not sure I'm there yet. I do have some unique deal flow for very early deals. I have people approach me currently with things that is pre-incubator, so to say. So before they go into yeah, so
pre-incubator. Wow, that's really
yeah,
early.
so before they go into Sting or before they go into another one of these incubators, they or Antler, for example. I had some people contacting me before they went into Antler. And you get a chance to invest at lower valuations. But in some cases, I've noticed that the kind of legal structure around it is very messy. You know, I've seen some equivalents of co-founder agreements. They didn't even have a co-founder agreement, but they
Hmm.
had some kind of legal document signed, and it was just a mess. You know, I'm always afraid that everything looks very nice right now, everybody's happy, and you're having a good team in place, you think, but then somebody drops out because the harsh times hits. So you want some kind of legal setup
Yep.
to protect you from that, that you can they can buy back the shares and so on. And I had a discussion with a company like this before summer and told them that if you get these things in order, then I'll make a bet on you. But they didn't have the capacity or the capability to make these documents come in place. And for me to help them out and do that, that's like a lot of hours to do that.
Yep.
So it's kind of a, I don't know, difficult situation there. What do you do? Do you pass up on that one? And I actually did. And they went into an incubator. I told them we can talk after you finish the incubator because probably the incubator will help you with these legal documents.
Mm. I'd like to go back to the fund, if you
Yeah.
don't mind. Yeah. So one of the things that when I did some of my research before I decided to do it more thoroughly, it's that some of the institutional investors do not want to jump in a first
No.
fund. But when you have the second one, they're more than willing to commit to the second, third, and fourth in the
Yeah.
same goal. How did you tackle that in VC Lab and in your planning?
Well, the whole idea was to raise a smaller fund, a micro fund. So when we noticed that we probably will not
A micro is less than 20 million euros.
less than 50, yeah, less than 20, yeah, it's 5 million euros, something like that. Yeah,
Yep.
and you can raise it in tranches also. So maybe you take 20 or something. Because I do see a lot of, see my funds out there in Sweden right now. There is co-investment companies. They are not a registered fund, but they invest money pooled from different investors, and they take some kind of fee from those investors or a carry or something like that.
And they have all us shareholders, and then before they are dodging how to, yeah, I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
exactly. Um,
I've seen those too.
But so and here I think was one thing that made us postpone this thing because my partner in this, he was more interested in raising a larger fund, and he'd been in the industry before, a lot of years before, when one of the really
Okay.
large funds raised their first fund here in Stockholm.
Hmm.
And so he was like, well, if they raised 50 million euro back then, why can't we raise 20 now? And I was like, I'm not sure. Well, we can try. So I said that let's build this iteratively because that's what they tell you if you go in VC Lab. That you raise your first fund, you raise it from people you know, you raise it from the investors you've been co-investing with and people that know you. And in US also your wealthy individual friends. And it's a little bit different here in Sweden because
Yep.
if I go to my people that have white collar jobs and worked 15 years like I in the industry, they don't have the salaries you have in the States. In the States, it is okay to put in 100k euro in something that is going to be drawn over 2 years. But if you go to someone here in Sweden, not a lot of people can do that, can allocate.
high net worth individuals in Sweden are not the same thing as high net worth individuals in
Exactly,
US.
exactly. So they have this thing called
I get it.
accredited investor in US, and a lot of
Exactly.
people are that. But here in Sweden, what I would say is, you should dip your toes into doing some angel investing because it's a good asset class. But if you go by the American standard with how much money you need, I think it's
Yeah, they would not be
no,
allowed to.
exactly. I think it's 300K.
Yeah, it's a yearly income or have assets of 10 million or something dollars. But
Yeah,
if you don't
$1 million.
if you don't
Yeah,
have that, sorry, yeah. If you don't have that, you're not allowed to invest at all.
exactly, exactly. So you're
It's like, okay.
you're basically left out of a very, very good yielding asset class that you should spend some or invest some money in. So going back to like how to raise that fund, then I mean, how many people do you need to approach to fill a 5 million euro fund? There's a lot of them. Then if they even if they put in 100K each, and that's for some a little bit steep. So
So, but one of the things, because when I heard of the VC Lab, I heard it from one of, I would like to call him a
mm,
friend. It's a guy who has his fund on Angel List. He has a rolling
mm,
fund, and he's focusing on supply chain. And when I asked him about the VC list or VC Lab, he just said they're just gonna have you working very, very hard, and the actual value you get out, if you've been running a business yourself or done that before, it's just keep on iterating to find your product market fit or your VC fit, and then it's going to take off. And it's going to take 2 years to get all the money in anyway.
mm,
And then I spoke to another one who was in the cohort before you when I saw what she had produced in VC Lab, and just the the numbers were just we're going to return 3 times MOIC. Like, okay, that's what everyone
mm.
says. And we are going to be in Stanford and Harvard and whatever in their incubators and what they do. And I said, yeah, pretty much everyone does that too, probably in the US. And then what we are going to do, we're going to focus on female founded teams where at least there was one female founder. Okay, that's different. I still hear lots and lots about it
Mm,
today, but we're in Sweden, so maybe it's different because we
mm,
hear backing minds talk all the time.
mm.
But when I just saw all of that, and start challenging her. Okay, so what are your LPs saying? What are the soft commitments that you're getting? What's the feedback that you're getting? She was just like, no, we're not there yet. We're having lots of meetings, and this is what we say. And for me, it was a bit, I would not invest in someone that sounded that
No.
vague. Because if it's a first fund, either you are not aware of how bad you are
Mm,
and you think you're really good, or you're just lucky. But if you are too shy and not really sure of yourself, and it's a first fund, and you at least need to get to the second one,
yeah.
it's just, yeah. I was a bit surprised how calm and laid back
So
one
she
could be.
finished the VC Lab program
Yep,
and she didn't close any investments
yep.
yet. Did she have any pacts or LOIs commitments?
From my understanding, at that point, it's been a few months since we
No.
spoke.
No.
No,
Okay. Also interesting that she didn't get kicked out because that's what they keep telling you all the time that if you don't start closing, we're gonna kick you out. There's only gonna be 1/3 of the cohort left by the end of this and so on. So we dropped out on our own a little bit also because I got a baby here in during the summer with
yep,
my wife.
we can hear.
So I kind of had to focus a little bit, but I think I would have pushed through and done the program if there was a little bit different environment of doing it when people are actually working and want to talk about money and doing investments and office stuff. But when people are on the beach, then I'm not sure. So, and then the question for us arose like, do we do this in the fall or not? But my partner here, he has not been in angel investing before. He wanted to get into it and he wanted to jump straight into raising a fund. And I think you can do that, but I think for the ones who wants to do it, they need to have a track record with fund management of some kind. I think actually running part of a portfolio, being an investment director at one of the funds or something. So you can go either way, I think, because otherwise, I think
Because
you will
they,
end up where your friend were, I think, with like, well, we have our thesis, which is a little bit, well, maybe it's good, maybe it's not. From what I heard, it sounds a little bit vague, as you say. We don't really,
it was
yeah,
vague,
and
yeah.
we can't really show our abilities because we haven't managed money before and it's not a really good track record, and people are a little bit reluctant with that. So, I mean, from what I hear from you, I wouldn't invest in that either. But I'm a little bit different because I want to manage my own money, I think, in that case.
But that's the thing that I think is an interesting, how to say,
Mm,
comparison. Like when we hear and see startups come in and start pitching, if they're overconfident, you get
mm,
a bit like no, and if they're not confident at all, you get no. You need that level of being sure that you can also answer all those questions that you might
yeah.
get. And when I see the ones that I have
Mm,
seen when it comes to VC, running your own fund and getting money in, I am a bit, I would say, impressed by how little it seems to take to actually get people to put money in. Because you have the management company, and then you have the like the money they get all the investments in, and you have so many different things you could do to structure, like I say, like a VC structure that can somehow complement the deficiencies or what you don't have in your normal GP team. Like you two, if you say you lacked the aspect of someone who's been running a fund that's in your size that you wanted. I don't know if your friend was in the same size. It sounded it was big. Then all you need to do is okay. Do we want to take in a person in our management company and give that person an extra carry? Do we want to take that person also to be allowed to be an investor?
mm.
And in this way, we can construct something that will balance out our
Yeah.
deficiencies. Did you talk about those things too in VC Lab?
Yeah, we did. And there's this concept of being a venture partner that you can have, which is someone who is not a general partner, but they support your fund in different ways. So, but their general idea about that is they can be great, but don't build your whole idea of how you're going to run your fund on them, because you're going to change venture partners more often than you change your underwear, basically. Because a
Oh,
lot of people say they're going to do stuff and then they don't. So, better.
so what is a venture partner in the VC Lab perspective? So we understand why you want to change it so
Now,
often.
you don't want to, but the problem is that people don't deliver on what they say they're going to do. So then you need to get rid of them.
Ah, okay. Oversell and
Yeah,
underdeliver.
exactly. And
It exists there as well.
yeah, for sure. And a venture partner can help you out with anything from scouting deals to find investor relations to making the companies in your portfolio run smoother. It can be anything that you do that you want to have extra support in.
Did you consider having a venture partner, you too?
Yes.
Because you were
Yeah,
two, right?
exactly. So one of the things we thought about was having a senior fund guy, as we called it,
Yeah,
or well, I guess a
exactly.
girl can be a guy, a cool guy, to support us a little bit. But I think ultimately it comes down to how important it is to be able to sell, and have the connections, because there was a lot of things with VC Lab program that I wasn't 100% sold on. But one thing is clear, and it's that like the first money you raise is going to be from people you know. So you need to have a really wide network of that. And the other thing is to build it small. And I think that
Build what small? The LPs or the
the,
company?
the the
What's
first
small?
fund, build it small, finish it, close it as fast as you can, and start investing that money, build
Ah,
track record. In the same way as we tell the startups to do, build your MVP, get it on the
yeah.
market, get some traction, then you can raise more money. Don't go for a really large fund, or don't go for a really large round if you are a startup. Build it iteratively. And I like that whole approach. And then it went a little bit askew with my partner there, because he wanted to build something large from the start, and I was more into, okay, but let's just close 2 million euro, invest that, and then raise another fund next year. And let's not even make it a fund. Let's make it an investment company that is not fund registered, and we can show track record.
And this is a very interesting thing because in the team that I'm currently discussing how what we could do
Hmm.
together, it's we have extremely different
Hmm.
competencies. We are very different stages in our lives, and it's very interesting now because it's a bit like when you are operative in a company. We're like right now we are tightening the snowball. like pushing it together. So we're like challenging each other. We are pretty much annoying one another just to understand what is it that is our pet peeves, what are we okay with, so that we are when we're 60 years down the line and we still haven't really seen potentially that much delivery, we're still going to be okay. We are
No.
still stuck or through true to our
Do you
mission.
know these people very well?
This is a yeah, I do, but it's not in the sense of investing
No.
together.
Because it is a
So that's
10-year commitment, or maybe even more, to raise a fund together or do these things. Because first you're gonna take in the money at 1 year, and then you're gonna do the investments for 2 or 3 years, and then companies are gonna grow, and then you're gonna divest and sell off. And it's a 10-year life cycle, something like that.
it is. It's long. I am married now. I know my wife for 7 years. It's not even a fund.
Yeah,
And we have two kids.
exactly, exactly.
But that's one of the things I think are really cool because it's also when you look at a startup and you have a single founder, you have a co-founder team, and as we know, both know, that team is going to change.
Yeah,
They won't be all those potentially most of the time in 2, 3, 4 years down the line. Something happens, as we said earlier today. But I haven't seen it because I've never watched it or looked at it in VC funds. I do not know who's sitting in all
no,
those different VC funds here in
no.
Stockholm. I don't know how many have changed along down the road.
They do.
So
I,
it's
I've heard about a few that they have changed partners and so on, but it seems to be messy. I haven't been in that industry, so I'm not. It's an outside perspective. It's but I don't think you should do it alone. So now you are a team, so that's good. But from my own perspective, I was thinking like, well, maybe I should push on with this on my own then, and maybe he can be associated with this, maybe as a venture partner or something like that, and then we can formalize it in something else later. But same way with when I tell entrepreneurs, don't be alone in your team. Find a co-founder. I think it's the same for
mm,
funds, and I think also a lot of LPs, limited partners that can invest in your fund, they think the same. They want a team, a team of people, because what happens if I get run over by a bus, or I don't know, something like that.
yeah, it's a lot of risk.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So what was the biggest takeaway that you had when you did VC Lab? What was like, oh, I did not know this at all before I joined this very, very tough program.
I think. Well, I knew that, but don't do American programs during summer. And that is delivery oriented is one thing, but you got a good insight in the VC industry. And one of the things,
Mhm.
I don't know if it's true because they have an interesting business model there, but apparently to them, the fundraising landscape is not as dry as everybody keeps telling you, because they have
Yeah.
data. They have hundreds of funds that they work with, and apparently they closed a lot of funds and signed a lot of pacts during June and July. So it's not as dry out there as you might think.
And in the way to construct your future VC fund or investment company, what did they teach you?
They taught you nothing about that early on, because
Oh,
they have a cookie cutter way of doing it. They wanted to push you to make an American fund, so that's also something you should keep in mind if you're in Europe. I think I'm no expert in this, but I think it would be hard to tell my Swedish investor friends that you should put money into a Delaware fund in US,
yeah,
you know. And
I think so too.
this is the legal documents that they will help you provide. And every time we try to talk about this, they pushed it like you're not there yet. You need to finish your thesis. That's the whole thing. Don't worry about the legal setup and so on. So they were a little bit unaware about, especially the Nordic landscape. I spoke to some other people from the Nordic countries. We were in groups, peer groups, and they felt the
Mhm.
same, that it's a little bit lacking of insight on how it works here in the Nordics with VC.
Over
Yeah,
here. Yeah,
exactly. So,
way too small for them.
so I think the main takeaway, I think from my side also, is if you want to make, if you want to make something with taking in other people's money and put it to work in startups, I think don't go for a fund straight off. Go for some kind of co-investment company, and then there is different things to think about there. If it should be, a syndicate with SPVs, or if it should
Mm.
be evergreen setup where you keep asking for more money, like a new emission of shares. But that also creates a lot of problem with new emission of shares. And also I've seen another cohort friend of mine, they run something that is not based on shares, but it's based on loans with mixed interests.
Oi.
Yeah, very messy. I don't know how you would do that accounting wise, but apparently it works, and he's based in somewhere here in the Northern Europe. So
So overall, when I'm trying to figure out what the biggest takeaway was from doing VC Lab, it's don't go too big too
yeah,
fast.
and
Is that what
stress
you're?
test your fellow GPs or your team like you do, and make sure that
Yep.
everybody can pull their weight, so to say. I mean, closing the LPs will be the biggest thing. And I think making that list of people with names, which ones will you get in contact with, which ones do you have that is your close network, and how much
Mm.
realistically you think you can get them to commit, because you're
Mm.
a good investor, so some people will trust you, but is it enough of people? And is do your
Yep.
co workers or your co GPs have the same network? I think that something that struck me is that the only two things that is really valuable is finding money to invest and finding good companies to invest in. That's the whole thing, you know.
That's the whole thing.
And if your GPs that you're going to do it with can't do that, then maybe they shouldn't be a GP. Maybe they should be something else.
I what you just said
Yeah.
now, I think it's pretty much the same thing that both of us are telling our startups, which is focus on what's important. Don't do all the nice bells and whistles. Just make sure that you have something that works in your company. And if you want to raise money to
Mm.
invest, there are two things. Be good at those two things.
Yeah, but there is one big difference between running a fund, I think, an investment fund, and running a startup, and it's the feedback loop.
Let me know.
But
Tell me.
it's the
Tell me.
feedback loop, because as a startup, you can build a product or get some traction really fast and show that, we have nothing, now we have a product, now we have these pilot customers, now we have these customers, they're paying this much, we're making this revenue, and you can do that in months.
Mm.
Preferably in months, but maybe in a half year or something like that, depending on where you are. But with a fund, how do you prove that? You can't really you
Okay.
can't really do that. So the cycle there is years before you can prove something that that is really paying off what you're doing. So then it becomes more of a trust thing, I think, with raising the fund. So mm,
That's one of the things I find. It might be the way I'm functioning as a person or individual. It's just that what you just said now, because it's such a time lag, like the decision that we, let's say, general partners are making today, potentially we'll know if it's good in 6, 7, 8
mhm,
years. And during that whole time, we do not know if it's a really bad decision or a good decision. And that's also one of the things I get a bit frustrated with when I see these VC pitch decks.
yeah,
I've seen one recently that said we're going to deliver more than 5 times the money within X amount of
mm,
years. And like every one of us know that what we did up until now has nothing to indicate what we'll do in the
mm,
future. There's
mm,
nothing. But still, if I have been a serial entrepreneur, or if I have run my own company, or if I have been done exits, when I say 5 times money, most people are, yeah, there's something with this person. It might work
mm,
here. I want to give him my money or
mm,
her. Just it's the first thing we learn when we start to invest in the stock market. Don't just look at how it's been
yeah,
going. You have to have an idea what's going to be in the future. And I feel that from my very limited knowledge at this moment, that for the LPs, it's just a portfolio thinking. We want this much money in venture, and in the venture space, I want someone that I feel okay about, and then I'm
yeah,
done. It's not going into depth. They don't even know which companies we're investing
mm,
in. Like when was this? when the war started in with Ukraine,
Mm,
Russia, what I heard in my network was that a huge amount of LPs started asking, "Where is my money invested? I need to know now because if I have any money in Russia or any money in Ukraine, I want it
mm,
out." They had no clue.
mm,
They had no clue. They don't know what their whole portfolio of investments
mm.
are. And I think that's something that's very important for us who wants to run VC funds or investment companies to remember that it's quite easy to just deliver a bit more than what the current incumbents are doing. Incumbents,
Yeah,
sorry.
and if you can't really look at past achievements to judge the future for a GP, if you want to put your money in there as an LP, then what is left then? Then it's like, personal relation. It,
Yep.
do I trust this person? Because I think ethics and the work morale or something like that is very important. And this, when you evaluate your fellow GPs now, like, do they? I think one thing you can't really do is do this, run a fund for real and have other commitments like running a startup or something like that. So maybe how do you think about that when you are part of a startup? You're gonna run a startup, you're gonna have a fund, you have a
Yeah.
family.
Yeah. This is one of the things because we're three at the moment. We were more than three in the
Mm,
beginning. And one of the things that made one of us drop out was that that person said, "I don't believe in your thesis, Thibaud, that you actually think you can do this part time." And I said, my understanding is that, okay, when I look at the structure of how these partners in a VC fund are doing it, they are basically meeting once every 1 or 2 weeks, looking at all those deals that their junior team or senior team has like prepared for them. And then, of course, they're doing lots of different meetings and seeing things, blah, 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 reading. But the actual face time that they have in the work, it's not 40 to 50 hours a week. Then maybe when you have five funds, it's a completely different thing. But in the first fund, I'm like, you won't be spending 60 hours looking at the curated deals.
but
So that's what my
who's gonna
thesis.
curate your deals?
That's the thing. It depends on if you want to have, let's say, what I call an index VC fund. You have 30 investments and you just hope that one of them works out. Then you don't have to curate that much. But from what I think I would like to have is maybe 10 to 12 investments. And we know pretty much in which field we want to do them in. And we also know that what type of LPs and people we have around us, so how we're going to attract these different type of investments. And when you actually put in the money, which a lot of VCs call themselves founder centric, which usually means now you have the money, I'm stepping back, I'm done.
Mm,
So depending, and also when you look at the schemes on how they have the management fees, after 4 or 5 years, they go from 2% to 1% because they're not going to spend that much time anymore with those
mm.
investments. So they are, in my perspective, they're already saying they're not doing full time. It's just they're not being honest about it. They want to have those management fees so they can invest it themselves in their own management company.
But I think weeding through unless you have junior partners, which I think you,
Yep.
I'm not sure.
We are not. We won't do that at this
No,
stage, though.
exactly. So you're gonna do that yourself, and you know how it is looking at
Yep.
decks. It takes a lot of time. You have to weed through a lot of decks to find something, and then when you get into that as a VC, you're gonna be always the lead investor in the deals. So you're gonna have to do a lot of due diligence on the companies, both legal wise and product wise and customer wise. So it's gonna eat
But
time.
then again, I'm going to push back because I've heard this feedback over and over
Hmm.
again. If you look at companies that no one is investing in, for example, then you have so much time to look at them and follow them. If you're looking at deals that is hot, you have to decide in one
Hmm.
week, and you won't be able to do all these things. You're just deciding, do we want to be on this train or not? You're doing all the work, of course, that you can, but it's like you're gonna work like that every single day if it's only 12 investments for a 10-year period.
So what's your trick there or your secret sauce to get access to these hot deals?
No, I that's the thing. I'm not sure if I would want our first fund to be focused on hot
No.
deals. Because if we're doing hot deals, then they would not ask for our money. A hot deal, I mean, I have to be honest with myself. Of course, I'm great. I'm a wonderful guy. But if you have North Zone and whatever my name is, and the founder can choose between the one who's invested in some of the biggest companies in the world and a new fund, I'm pretty sure who they're gonna choose. So I won't even be in that arena in the
Hmm.
beginning.
But then you said that you don't need to spend the full time on running this fund because
Mhm.
investing in hot deals are so fast that you don't have time to do DD. But then,
Yeah, and then the slower
yeah.
ones, like when there's not that much going on, I can do the same process that I have 1 week for in a hot deal. I can do in 6 weeks to 2 months,
Hmm.
and it won't be that big of a hassle. And then I can follow them. I can then reduce the risk as I see how much they are executing. So from that perspective, I'm not sitting with them 40 hours a week. This is my thesis, and I'm more than happy to push back on this next time when we do this, because I would love that. But from my perspective right now, running the first fund, and I don't think it will be like a 400 million kronor first. It will be probably company by company basis for 3, 4, 5 times, so that the team of VC, my VC team, feels that we can work together. And then we have done 5 investments together. We've done all the investments done before. We can show a track record of that we are working as a team together. And then I think it will be easier to get bigger
So
money.
you will
That's how I'm thinking
so you
right
will
now.
start out with raising the money for the individual deals that you find,
Yeah,
basically.
SPVs per per per
SPVs.
per
Okay,
case.
yeah. Then you do have more time because otherwise I think it would be also difficult to convince an LP to invest in you unless you are working full time. But here it's like here you have a concrete deal that you can show them and say, we're not talking about you
Yeah,
investing in me, we're talking about you investing in this deal that I have created for
this
you in this
company. Yeah.
company, and then you can talk about that company. And that's also something that I took away from the program. It's easier if you have warehouse deals, if you already have deals coming in or deals that you already did invest in that you put into the entity that you want to raise money for because it's tangible. It's not
Yeah.
only, yeah, I'm gonna half your costs with this product. Well, what is the product? Can you show me? I want to understand before I put my money in that.
Mm. Because one of the things that what I realized, and it's not like it's a massive revelation, it's just that, okay, I've done 10 investments. My best investment up until now has a 10 times
Mm,
TVPI. If I will go in with that and say, hey, I want to raise a fund of 200 million kronor or 20 million euros, people are going to ask, yeah, you did 10, and how many of them are relevant for the field that you want to go into? Let's say 4 of them are. And okay, out of those 4, how many of them have actually exited or anything like that? I'm like, no, they haven't, because I've only been investing for the last 4 years, so it's not done yet. And then I know that institutional investors that I would like to get on board, the ones I've discussed with, they don't even want to jump in on a first one. They're more than happy to jump in on my second one, but not my first one. So then I need to make sure how can I have people around me that will secure that we will have enough, let's say, patience and also dedication to get past the first
mm,
one. So then we started to discuss, okay, so if we're going to raise 4 different types of funds in 10 years, how many SPVs do you have to do before as a joint team to do these together? And then we started to look at what are management fees and blah, 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 blah. And when all of this is coming together, as we said earlier, it's all about trust. And if I give myself 5 more years, I'm going to have quite a lot of people hope potentially has done exits around me.
mm,
And if they still continue to like me and see my colorful clothes now, yeah, I like that guy, then you have secured your first fund.
mm.
Because it's a one. I don't know if they told you that in the VC Lab, or you probably already know this. The institutional investors I've spoken to, they said we only invest in a second fund if family offices that we like invested in the first one. So it's not just anyone and any first fund. It has to be the right people in the
Mm.
first fund. And how do you get them on board?
Hmm.
So that's the whole like equation that we're thinking about. How can we actually construct something that gets the right family offices in our first
Mm.
fund? And what do they have to see
Hmm.
before?
True.
Yeah.
All right, we're running up on 50 minutes of recording now. Hmm.